Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. I've got a bookshelf tour for you today. Let's go. Thank you to my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. So this isn't just any bookshelf tour. This is a Kindle bookshelf tour. And I've been wanting to do this for a while, but it's taken me forever to figure out the right method for doing a Kindle bookshelf tour. And turns out it's really simple. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but I want to give credit to Roger over at Roger Reads for showcasing the method that he did for his Kindle bookshelf tour. So I got this idea from him and it fits perfectly. It works great. If you have not watched Roger, you definitely need to check out his channel. I'll leave it linked in the description below, so I'll tag him in this. He just had a really fun video and it was perfectly done. So I am following his method, and what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be showing my Kindle library from my mobile device. So I do not read on my mobile phone. I just want to give that disclaimer. But the easiest way for me to show you my Kindle library is to do it with my phone. So you will see here in a few minutes a video shot of my screen with my Kindle library open, and I will be walking you through the books on my Kindle bookshelf. And so I hope you really enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to stay tuned afterward. I will be sharing some final thoughts. And here we go. Okay, so we're going to take a look at my Kindle library here. And you'll notice that the majority of my library is set up with bookshelves for each author in my library. So we're going to start off with Agatha Christie. And I've got a good chunk of Agatha Christie's books here. Not all of them by any means. She's written a lot more books than this. But I would say that the majority of the books in my library are probably Hercule Poirot stories, like Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express. And then I've got some others as well, though. I've got Miss Marple for some of the books. I've also got all of the Tommy and Tuppence books. So Partners in Crime, The Secret Adversary, NRM. So I've got all of their books as well. But the majority of the books, I think, are Hercule Poirot. So I have read a lot of Agatha Christie books when I was a kid, and I'm slowly collecting all of them so that I can read them again. Bengali. I have his complete Emaneska series. Those are the ones with all the colorful covers. I've also got his series Chasing Graves. And I've also got Heart of Stone. Benedict Patrick. Now, this is a guy that I have to say, these are some of the most gorgeous covers I have ever seen in fantasy literature. I'm just completely blown away by the colors and the attention to detail, and they're just gorgeous. Benedict Patrick is a self-published author. The first book is They Mostly Come Out at Night, and then he's written like 10 or 15 books at this point, and I'm just really excited to get to his series eventually. I've also got some book files. So the first one here is Doloran's Shadow. That was sent to me by the author. Angela B. Chrysler is the author of that book. And it's a Norse-inspired fantasy. Really good, actually. I loved reading the book. I have not read her second book in that series yet, but I do eventually plan to. As you can see, I've got Shadow and Claw as well, the first duology in the Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. You may have seen my video review for that book, and you know that I did not really care for it that much, and I won't be continuing with this series. Cushiel's Dart I also have. That's one of the books that I've been wanting to read for a while. And actually that and Shadow and Claw I got with Tor's monthly free ebook program. So that's how I downloaded those. And Shade by Chad Nicholas is an absolutely brilliant psychological thriller about a serial killer on the loose. It is just really, really good. Then let's look at Brandon Sanderson. So as you can see, I have all of the Stormlight Archive books on ebook. And I have read all of those books. It's just the Oathbringer and Words of Radiance are not marked as read because I read the physical copies. I also have Steelheart, which is the first book in the Reckoners series. I have Skyward, first book in the Skyward series. Mistborn, first book in the Mistborn series. And then Dawn Shard, which is one of the Stormlight Archive novellas. Chena Mieville is an author that I struggled with. I DNF Perdido Street Station, but I do want to give him another shot. So I have The City in the City, which I've heard is really good, and I've also heard some interesting things about Kraken. So I'll give him another try and see what I think, but Perdido Street Station did not work for me. I have The Complete Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini, except for the book of short stories that he released a couple of years ago. And I also do not have his book To Sleep in a Sea of Stars yet, which is his first foray into sci-fi. So eventually. I've got some classics here. I won't go over it too much, but as you can see, I've got Dracula. I've got Edgar Allan Poe, which I have physically as well. Treasure Island. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was okay. And Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is one of my all-time favorites. And then I've got Dorian Gray and the Time Machine and such. You can see all those there. I am slowly collecting more classics on ebook, so eventually I'll get more. Dan Brown. The only books I have on ebook are Origin and Digital Fortress so far. I have read all of the Robert Langdon thrillers that Dan Brown has written. He's one of my favorite authors. I have not read Digital Fortress yet. That's a standalone novel. It's not part of his Robert Langdon series, but I have not read it yet. And eventually I'm going to collect all the others on ebook. I have the first book in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, which is, of course, a Daniel Abraham book that he wrote with Ty Franck. And that's so they came up with that pen name together. I have some of the Dune books here. I have Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. And I also have one of the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson spin-offs for Dune. I don't really plan to get into that extended series, but that particular one sounded interesting. I have the 3 books by Dirk Ashton in the Paternos series. Paternos Rise of Gods, Wrath of Gods, and War of Gods. I have only read the first book, but it was absolutely a phenomenal read, and I highly recommend Dirk Ashton. And then I have some enlightened teachers here. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Wayne Dyer, and some other books by Wayne Dyer. You can probably tell I really like Wayne Dyer. He's one of my favorite thinkers and teachers. I'm also really a fan of Rumi's poetry and sayings. So, as you can see, I've got a few different ones here. I also have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I do have a shelf for her because I intend to have all of her books on ebook at some point. She's only written 2 so far. The Night Circus was her first book, and it's my second favorite book of all time. I eventually hope to get the Starless Sea on ebook because I plan to collect all versions of her books, audio, ebook, physical book. She's just that good, guys. I have the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I have only read Jade City and Jade War. I have not read Jade Legacy yet, but I really enjoyed this series. Not my favorite series of all time, but it's definitely a great series. I'm excited to read Jade Legacy at some point in the very near future. George R. R. Martin. I have all of the Song of Ice and Fire books that are written to date on ebook as well as physical. I also have A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is a prequel to Game of Thrones, the Hedge Knight series. It's absolutely fantastic. I also have Fire and Blood, which I'm currently reading. And then I have Wild Cards and Dream Songs that he's also involved with. I have not read those yet. I have the Hogwarts short story collections, and these feature characters from the Harry Potter universe, just kind of a more expanded look at some of those characters. These were on ebook only, that's why I got them. Eventually I will get all of the Harry Potter books on ebook as well, but I also have them physically, so I'm not in any rush. I absolutely love Harry Potter, so I will do a reread of those eventually. I also have the first Foundation book by Isaac Asimov. As you can see, my copy is currently sporting the cover from the TV series with the ugly sticker on it. I really loved reading this book. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, but I still really enjoyed it. And I actually liked the series as well. I have 3 of James Lovegrove's Sherlock Holmes fan fiction books. And these books reimagine Sherlock Holmes as he goes up against the supernatural forces of evil. And one of those books, the Cthulhu case books, Sherlock Holmes and the Shadowwell Shadows, that's the only one I've read, but it features Cthulhu-inspired monsters, and it's a fantastic book. So I'm excited to read the other books from James Lovegrove as well. I'm sure I'll eventually collect all of his books. I also have Songs of Insurrection by J.C. King, the first book in his Dragon Songs series, and then I have the entire collection of the Tales of the Floating World, which I think is a sequel series, but I have not read it yet. I really like J.C. King. It's Asian-inspired fantasy, and I just really enjoyed reading that first book, so eventually I'll finish the series. I have all of the books by Jesse Teller. Jesse is a good friend of mine, and I don't love his books only because he's my friend. I love them because they are seriously great fantasy. So you've got Song, Hemlock, and Crown, the Manhunters series, the Madness series, Onslaught, Plight, and Wrath. He's written so many books, guys, and he's just a really great writer. So I'm so happy to have collected all of his books. And as you can see, I have my Jim Butcher shelf. I have all but 3 of the Dresden Files books. Some of these I've read, some of them I have yet to read, but I'm just thoroughly loving the Dresden Files. I also have the first book in another of his series, The Furies of Calderon, and I also have The Aeronauts Windlass, which is the first book in the Cinder Spires series. It's a steampunk fantasy, and that book was actually really good, so I highly recommend it. I eventually hope to collect all of Joe Abercrombie's books. And as you can see, I've got the First Law trilogy, all of those. I've got all of the standalone books. And I've got a short story book as well. I've got Half a King, which is the first book in the Shattered Seas trilogy, I think it's called. And then his second First Law World trilogy, I have the first book in that, A Little Hatred. I have the first book in the Banished Lands series by John Gwynne, titled Malice. Now, I have not read this yet, but I did make John Gwynne a shelf because I have a feeling that I am really going to enjoy John Gwynne. It's just what my gut tells me. So I made a shelf for it. I will eventually read Malice. And this is no surprise. I'm a huge J.R.R. Tolkien fan, so I have The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit on ebook, as well as physical, as well as audio. I do have a Kindle Unlimited shelf because I do occasionally borrow books from Kindle Unlimited. I'm currently reading Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson, Book 3 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I do have 3 books by Leigh Bardugo, Six of Crows, which I have read. Crooked Kingdom I have not read yet, but I really enjoyed Six of Crows, so I want to read Crooked Kingdom soon. And Ninth House, which is, to my understanding, more of an adult fantasy, whereas Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are more YA. I'm really excited to read that one as well. I've heard good things about Ninth House, and I really like her writing style. So I also have the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. This is the only book in the series that I own, Gardens of the Moon. Max Gladstone. I have a series of 6 of his books that are urban fantasy books. The only one I have read is 3 Parts Dead. That's the one you can see with the lady holding the knife with the kind of golden tinge in the background. That's a really, really good book, and I want to get to the others in the series as well. So I've got all 6 of those books, and then I've got a book called The Scholast in the Low Waters Kingdom. Actually, I think it's a novella. And as opposed to the other books, which are urban fantasy, I think The Scholast in the Low Waters Kingdom is traditional epic or high fantasy. Michael R. Fletcher. I have Beyond Redemption and The Mirror's Truth, both in his Manifest Delusion series, and A Swarm of Steel and Fire and Flesh are both part of that world as well. And then he also wrote a sci-fi / cyberpunk book called Ghosts of Tomorrow, which I've really been wanting to read as well. And then I just got a few miscellaneous books here that I don't really have anywhere else to put. Some of them are nonfiction. Yes, I've just got a few there. Some of them are books that I don't know where else to put, like Slaughterhouse-5. I'm honestly not sure what genre that fits in, so I just threw it in here, by Kurt Vonnegut. And then Christopher Moore's Fool. I know it's a satire, but I don't know exactly where it would fit other than that. So I just threw it in here. But yeah, as you can see, I've got a few different things in here. A book on Egyptian mythology, geek wisdom. I've really been wanting to read The Sacred Teachings of Nerd Culture. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. This is by far my largest shelf, I think, miscellaneous fantasy. So as I mentioned before, there's a few shelves that are not author organized, and this is one of them. I'm not going to go into all this too much here, but I do want to point out a few highlights. I have Assassin's Apprentice on here, which I'm actually currently reading. I have Anne McCaffrey books on here. Tad Williams' The Dragonbone Chair. Yes, I've got a lot of fantasy books on here that I don't know if I want to make a shelf for that author. It will depend on how things go. The Bear and the Nightingale is an absolutely brilliant book. The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan is something I've really been wanting to read for a while. The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington is one as well. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. And I've got Talendor's Guest on there, which is my book. It's probably good for me to have that. Piranesi by Susanna Clark is one I've really been wanting to read. So yeah, I just kind of throw in the books into this shelf that I really am wanting to read, but I don't know if I'm going to make a shelf for the authors yet. So we shall see. As you can see, I've got the other books in the Winter Night Trilogy, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch. Legends and Lattes, that's been real popular on BookTube. So that's my miscellaneous fantasy shelf. I also have a miscellaneous horror shelf. Not very many things on here. The complete H.P. Lovecraft collection. Nightmare by Chad Nicholas, which is an absolutely brilliant psychological horror. Dance Macabre is actually a really quite a fun short story. I've also got some miscellaneous mystery here. J.F. Penn, Stone of Fire is pretty good. It's an international thriller. The Celtic Conspiracy is really good. And Beyond a Reasonable Doubt is the only book that I have bought because of the title. That is rare for me, but it sounded so cool. And I read the blurb as well, but the title is what drew me in, because it obviously is a take on beer, and I love beer, so why not? I figured I'd check it out and see what it's like. I also have some miscellaneous sci-fi here. Again, I won't take too much time with it. The Hyperion books are on here. Fantastic books. I've got Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and The Lost World as well. The first Thrawn book by Timothy Zahn, stuff like that. N.K. Jemisin. The Broken Earth trilogy is absolutely brilliant. As you can see, I've got all of those here. I also have the first books in some of her other series, The Killing Moon, The 100,000 Kingdoms, and The City We Became. I eventually want to read everything that N.K. Jemisin has written, and so I'm on my way. It's no secret that Neil Gaiman is my favorite author. I've got most of his books on ebook here, including all of The Sandman, or most of The Sandman. I think I might be missing a couple here, but I have the majority of The Sandman on ebook as well. I had kind of done that on a whim, but it wasn't really a pleasant reading experience on digital. The format was kind of wonky, so I didn't stick with it. I just bought the physical copies. Patrick Rothfuss, The Kingkiller Chronicles, Name of the Wind, The Wise Men's Fear, and The Slow Regard of Silent Things, which is absolutely brilliant. That might be my favorite book of the three. Slow Regard was really good, and so are the other two books. So I gave Pat his own shelf because I eventually have faith that he's going to release the third book and continue writing as well. So I'm excited to see what happens. I've got two books by Philip K. Dick. One is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, aka Blade Runner. And then Electric Dreams is a collection of short stories that inspired the Amazon TV series. So the TV series was really good, and I've been wanting to read the short stories that inspired it. Philip Pullman, his Dark Materials series, The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass, and also a prequel, which is The Book of Dust. I have not read The Book of Dust yet, but I have read the other books, and they're absolutely fantastic. The show is quite good as well. I have two books by R.A. Salvatore in the Drizzt saga, The Crystal Shard and Streams of Silver. So I'm eventually hoping to start reading some R.A. Salvatore. I do have the first three books in the Wheel of Time series. I have currently DNF'd the series. I may eventually go back to it one of these days, but I have no plans in the near future. So I do have the first three books here. I also have The Dark Thorn, The Twilight Dragon, and The Unlocked Tome by Sean Speakman. Sean Speakman is a fantastic author. I can't wait for you guys to read him. You really should. I have all of the Dark Tower books by Stephen King. Fantastic series. I recently finished it. I also have Salem's Lot and The Stand. I have not read The Stand yet, but Salem's Lot is my favorite Stephen King book of all time, at least so far. I have a shelf for Stieg Larsson. He is the author of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. All fantastic books. And we're getting close to it here, folks. I've got a few collections of short stories, Unfettered and Unfettered 2 by Sean Speakman. He's the editor-in-chief for those books. Unbound as well as one of his. And then I've got a few other collections. X Marks the Spot was a collection of self-published writers, one of which is a good friend of mine, and that's how I got a hold of that book. Actually, it was given to me as a review copy, so I really, really like it. I have a good chunk of the Shannara series on ebook as well, and I have eventually will collect all of the Shannara books. Terry Brooks is one of my favorite authors. I also have his new book, Child of Light, and I also have Small Magic, which is a collection of short stories taken from some of his different book series. I have a bunch of Terry Pratchett books in the Discworld universe. I eventually hope to collect more, but this is what I have so far. Guards is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. Just a riot. It's just a great read, and I'm looking forward to reading more in the Discworld series. I've also read The Hogfather. That's a great holiday read. I do have 2 Ursula K. Le Guin books, The Lathe of Heaven and The Left Hand of Darkness. Eventually I'll collect all of her books on ebook as well, but I have the Earthsea books in a large 1-volume omnibus, so I may or may not get those on ebook. We'll see. Victor LaValle, The Ballad of Black Tom is an absolutely brilliant novella, and I am really excited to read The Changeling by Victor LaValle as well. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, I have the first 3 books in the Deathgate cycle, Dragonwing, Firesea, and Elvenstar. I have the entire series in physical book. I'm actually almost done reading it, but I'm slowly collecting it in ebook form as well. And I have the first 3 books in the Dragonlance Chronicles by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman as well. I have never read the Dragonlance books, believe it or not, but I do own it. I have the first 3 books in the Witcher series. And that is it, guys. So as you can see, I have a lot of books on my Kindle, way more than I do in my physical library. And I would venture to say that I probably have not read even half of the books I own in my Kindle library yet. I will eventually get there, I think, if I don't keep buying more books, which I probably will. So I'm a lost cause, guys, but that's okay because I love books and I love to read. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think, and make sure you are reading more books. I'll talk to you soon.